Hi there, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I love when I get to use Zoom Workplace to talk to my friends and colleagues in locales all over the world in real time, seeing pixel perfect, crystal clear audio and video.
It's a great alternative when we can't be physically co-present. Thanks, Zoom.
I
What are we doing? What is this bit?
don't know.
We're doing an ad for Zoom, which certainly does not need our support. They're doing great. We need their
No, fuck
support.
them. Fuck them all.
Okay.
Unless they are choosing to be sponsoring our podcast, much like Kid Sneaker Company, quote unquote, sponsored
Olympics, of course.
the
The
Battle
Battle
of
of
the
the
School
School
Mini Olympics,
Olympics.
Botsmo,
Yeah.
Botsmo, yes.
Now I would like to clarify when Zoom sponsors us, we will want actual money. We won't just want their name on things, right?
Or for us to do a commercial for them for free. No.
Right. Right. Which we're basically already doing now. So we've already won.
Yes.
We won. We won Bosmo. We won.
Look right into your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan. The other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet feather, sweet feather. What do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather. No sex, just titillation.
So on the previous podcast, when we did our cliffhanger, we did the cliffhanger for the next regular edition, which is called, I want to say Boy Trouble, and it's about Patty. Okay. But
Yes.
but we forgot to mention that actually before that was the book we're doing today, which is Superstar number one, Lila's story. So you remember the special editions. Those are our perfect summers, our special spring breaks, are
Malibus.
also very special Christmases, or don't forget about autumn.
What about a winter
See
carnival?
ya in the special fall, and of course we're having a not winter, not carnival, winter carnival.
Yeah.
Then we had our thrillers where we're working at the news in the summer and seeing people get murdered, and then they're seeing us and we're making eye contact, and now he's trying to kill us, and he sort of shows up to the neighbor's house with a mustache, and we ignore that for 11 chapters, and we did those. And by the way, those aren't over. They're
Yeah.
over for a while. I
They
don't know
come back.
why. I can't tell you the thinking behind this, but there is additional thrillers to come, including the sort of like at the news format that we've seen. But before that, we're venturing into this like whole new subgenre of side books, which is called superstars. And they're basically stories that follow one of the secondary characters and dive into them. So it's to my knowledge, it's like Lila, Bruce, Enid, Olivia, these types of folks. There may be a couple others, maybe a Winston, these types, right?
Don't you dare tempt me with a Winston if we don't get one.
Well, I'm just thinking of who in my mind is in that tier.
Okay.
And to me, it's a very, very clear tier.
It's a clear tier.
Unfortunately, it does not include Jeffrey. It does include Bruce. Sorry, who did you say?
I said a queer tier. A queer tier. Tier rhymes with queer. You said clear tier. I said queer
Yeah,
tier.
I'm just okay, whatever. But so you get the idea.
I'm just
and
not interested in what you're saying. So
Well, it was rhyming, but it didn't. Okay.
help. Yeah, no, that's famous. Rhyming doesn't necessarily. Can I ask a clarifying question?
And I can't promise I have the answers. Because by the way, what I also want to say is I don't think I read these as a kid. I think I saw them in the
Oh.
library. It was like, no thanks.
Does this feel so different than just a regular Sweet Valley High book about Lila?
Well, I was just gonna say, if you would ever let a woman speak in your life,
Nope. All set.
is that it's kind of interesting because it is like a regular edition in some ways in terms of the type of plot, but it also shares a lot of qualities with the liminal super editions. To me, the first sentence of this book kind of
Yes.
tells us here's what we're in for in terms of like, well, it's summer vacation again, but it's a different kind, but it's sort of the same, but it's sort of different or whatever. We have to spend a couple chapters making sense of that. Because I went into a little nervous of like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, is it going to be first person? Like, I didn't know what I was picturing. I had
Could you
no
imagine?
idea. Maybe I was thinking of the diaries of the girls because those aren't first person, those are all diary entries.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I felt like the wayfinding of like, what are we doing here in the first chapter or so was very reassuring. I was able to orient myself to the rules, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just a Sweet Valley High book. It focuses on Lila more than a regular book would. It's summertime fun times, so the decisions actually don't matter at all, and it all exists in this weird liminal space. But if you're hoping for duplicity and backstabbing, if you're hoping for dramas and reveals, if you're hoping for good old-fashioned Sweet Valley fun, have I got a book for you? It's called Superstar Lila's Story.
Robert, I think you're, and again, I potentially have stumbled into this kind of accidentally, but it's sort of getting me thinking. Something you said is getting me thinking about something actually really quite interesting.
Certainly not something I said, but something
I'm really connecting some dots here.
You give me those dots.
I think you astutely point out that really the question of genre, the first sentence is like, well, it's summer again or whatever. You're like, okay, because we remember that in a couple, but not all of the super editions, and then all of the thrillers, there are these summers. And in the super editions, they're completely isolated. So I think there's like two, because there's Malibu Summer and there's Perfect Summer. Those are just random one-offs, right? They have nothing to do with each other. They have nothing to do with, right? Whereas the thrillers is one continuous summer where they're at the Sweet Valley News having this internship, and that's a completely different summer, right? So those already are three separate summers, right? And we've like figured out how to make sense of those in our head in terms of like the multiverse. With this, it's feels sort of like a super edition in the sense that it's like a one-off summer, and yet it, like the super edition, is chronologically anchored to the regular editions in the sense of timelines of like what has happened in the universe and where we're at. So for example, they tell us pretty quickly a few pages in that Liz is with Todd, and it's like, oh, okay. The same way that the super editions and those summers or in the thrillers, like Liz was with Jeffrey or Liz was with whoever she was or wasn't with whenever it came chronologically. So it anchors us that way. But we're going to be also dealing with some liminal elements. But I think it behooves us to dig into what, if anything, are these liminal elements, and why, if it does this story deserve to be this status? Why does this story need a liminal summer for it to happen? As you say, it potentially could have happened in the regular books. I think a reading that wants to say there is a reason for that would dig into the text's own very explicit drawing attention to this question of magic and things feeling magical. Are these super editions potentially a sort of wish fulfillment series? You know, there's a lot of discussion of fairy tale and magic and things, and some of her deepest fears are there's a catharsis, and maybe there is something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's and maybe there isn't. I guess the world will never know. I, for one, am frustrated with the fact that it doesn't get a real title.
Yeah, it's boring.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, nothing about this book would make me, nothing about the cover of this book or the spine of this book would make me read this. And spoiler alert, future, past Robert, whatever, you're going to want to have read this. So I want to like reach back in time to young Becky. And there are a couple of things I would say, a couple of investments, a couple of hair choices. But really, I would say, at least read Superstar #1. It's great.
And you know what, Robert? This is making me excited for an element of discovery, because usually I've read them, but this one, maybe I have, but I certainly don't, like, I have no memory of it specifically. I'm like, yeah, this seems like something that would happen or whatever, but I don't really remember them. I don't think I read them, because yeah, they don't look appealing. The cover's ugly. It seems boring, whatever. And it's like, yeah, why do I want to be reading about? I mean, Lila could be interesting, but like, well, I'm gonna literally read about Enid for book, kill me. Like, I can't even imagine what Enid's is gonna be. Like, I don't know how we're gonna prepare for that.
And quickly, my guidance to past Becky is only about Lila's story. I'm not gonna tell her to read Enid's story until I've read it myself, because I am dreading it.
Yeah, no, I don't know if any of the other ones are good, but I also, like you, thought it was gonna be really not appealing, and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, because you're a human being with a brain and a heart, and this works with both.
And a bussy, don't forget it.
I can't forget it because you will not let me. I don't know the extent to which it works on your bussy, although I'll bet that Evan Armstrong gets your motor running.
Well, his arms are strong. And
I love
when
that.
Lila, I died. I actually died.
I love when these books are frothy and fun, but they're also like instruction manuals on how to flirt. Like this gets you guys, listeners, if you need to get a guy and his last name is Armstrong, talk about how strong his arms are. It's great.
It's like, you know what the kids don't understand these days? It's like there was a time when it was like, don't overthink it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was like we weren't so sort of steeped in like irony and like reflexivity and like a meta culture
Mhm.
that like, it's like now you walk around, you would completely miss that. If
Yeah.
this guy's name was Evan Armstrong, let
Right.
alone say, but even like clock, like his arms are strong because it's just like our brains are too complicated now.
Yeah.
And like,
I blame
it's like
AI.
back.
I blame AI and their tinfoil and their meats.
Okay. 6 words.
I have several. One is something you love to do that I've never done, which is picking 6 words from the book.
You have done that.
Have I?
I think you were the first to do it. It's on the tip
No,
of our tongue.
you're
Don't
the
say.
one who plays with the form. You're the
Hold on.
mistress of the form. The give, the take, the ebb, the flow.
First of all, you did it in Super Thriller number 4, Deadly Summer.
Oh,
when
sure,
you
of course.
said at the mall, tear at the mall 4,
Yes.
or at the subway, but there wasn't, I think, another time. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. A pair of phony fortune hunters.
Hmm.
That's just how 2 of the characters in the text are described, and it just like hit me so well.
You know what a good companion, a 3-word companion to that would be?
Yeah.
It was something that I remember seeing in the text that sort of gave me a similar feeling. When Lila's thinking to herself about these 2, she describes one of them as not exactly solvent.
That's good.
That could be a 3-word review.
That's
Not
great.
exactly
Although
solvent.
the book is exactly solvent, so I don't know. The other one I have borrows from the name of a TV show that is truly terrible that I have watched and that I would not encourage our listeners to watch. And the summary is For the Love of DILFs.
Slow down. For the Love of DILFs. Okay, I don't know that TV show.
It's a dating show where there's like a group of himbos and a group of DILFs and they like date across generations. And the like budget is so small that everybody's sharing a room and that all of their dates are like, you're still in the house and you're having a picnic here. Regardless.
Wait, is this on like gay reality channel
Yes.
or something? Like where is this on?
Oh my God, I think you can only watch it on like DaddyTV. Like it's not I'm literally not even kidding.
Is DaddyTV free, paid, subscription based?
All it costs is your voice. That's from The Little Mermaid.
Don't tell me where. I know where it's from.
Okay, you had no reaction. It was like talking to a brick wall.
That is a reaction. No reaction is information, Robert.
That's
You
true.
need to take that in sometimes.
I
You
hear that.
really sit with that.
That's hard. That is hard to face, and I do see what you're saying. We stream it through illegal means, probably. Regardless, this book is about a competition for daddy's love. The central tension here is competition. I mean, it's presented throughout. It is sometimes a fun romp, the way that For the Love of DILFs presents their romantic competitions, and it sometimes is deadly serious, as For the Love of DILFs never is.
A companion that I could have that would be 2 words to that is Electra Who.
Oh yeah, woof.
I mean,
woof
real.
McGuff.
Real. It's real.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be Electra Who : For the Love of DILFs.
Yeah. Brackets, the Fatal Night remix.
Of course. And fatal is spelled how?
F8L. And that's an inside joke that listeners won't understand. And I should quickly explain it, which is, we like to divide up the tasks. And one of Robert's tasks is to upload the file to the Google Drive, the audio file and the video file. And we thank them for it.
You're welcome.
And they like to be playful with file names and versioning and so on. And they love to sort of sometimes put the number of the book, sometimes not, sometimes put SVH, sometimes not, sometimes put just like different spelling. So like instead of it being called that fatal night.mp3, it's called like DAT space F8L NYT or something.
Correct.
And it's like
That fatal night.
and so I can't search for it. I can't
Yeah.
find it with sort of traditional navigation.
Well, I mean,
And
you
so it
could
becomes
go to
kind of
most
like a
recently
puzzle.
added. Sorry, you
It's a
could go to
puzzle.
most recently
It's a
added.
fun puzzle.
You could go to
Yeah.
most recently added. Do you hear
And
me?
I do. And I do.
And it's there. That
Yep.
fatal night.
Mhm.
Sorry, you were speaking about a difficulty, and I was
Electra Who.
Yeah.
Electra Who. Okay, she wants her dad and whatever. It's
and
interesting.
whatever. Wow.
This isn't really a review, but just a 5-word sentence.
Okay, I'll take it.
Hearing West Germany was jarring. And then I go, when was this? I'm like, you can't. And then I Google, and it's like that Germany shit happened in 1990, and this book was in 1989. I'm like, that's awkward.
That Germany shit happened in 1990. And this book is from 1989.
Like, quote unquote,
And that's awkward.
Reunification.
And that's awkward. Ooh, cringe. That
It
has
is
no
cringe.
rills.
It is cringe. It is cringe. It
Oh.
is exactly. Okay. So I guess, do you want to guess the word on the back or whatever?
Are you not going to give a real 6-word?
Oh,
6-word, it's just hearing West Germany was jarring?
I don't really have one exactly. I just have some disjointed thoughts. So whatever. Let's just get into it.
Okay.
Okay, on the back.
I mean, so in my search to find out if this was number 1 or not number 1, I saw the
saw it.
word. The word is competition. Dot, dot, dot.
Dot, dot, dot.
Oh, no. You got me in love.
Oh my God, you know what?
Do,
You know how in the last one we didn't say that it was this one? Another thing we didn't say in the last one, because
Oh,
I must
no.
have just not been looking at the book, but
Mhm.
something that was in my hard copy book
Mhm.
was this like contest they did that was like, tell us your resolutions of going into the 90s.
Oh, wow. We should have
Yeah,
done that.
so-
That would have been fun.
Yeah, but I brought the book upstairs already, so I'll get it next time. Okay. I guess we get into it.
I think we must. It's summer vacation, and America and Sweet Valley's favorite heiress, Lila Fowler, is home and bored. She wants to shake things up, and she wants a new love interest, and she is at a concert for Carla Xavier, and of course we get this pop star's full name, and she runs into a very hot guy, and she determines that she wants this hot guy to be hers. And so she concocts a plan to get him away from his current girlfriend, and we get her full name, and I will not be saying Sonia's last name right now. And she breaks him away, and it seems like things are going really well. At the same time, Lila's dad, George Fowler, has started up with a new woman named Joan Borden. And Joan Borden seems too good to be true. She is so sweet and so friendly, and she is always around. She lives in LA, but she comes in all the time. And Daddy is always going out to LA to see her. And Lila really, really doesn't like it. And Joan has this daughter, Jacqueline. And you heard me? And everybody really wants Lila and Jacqueline to be really good friends. And Jacqueline seems really, really sweet. But Lila is not into it. And Lila is like, she's fake. She's pretending. I'm not into it. Lila attempts to frame Jacqueline by doing two things. She steals $500 out of her dad's petty cash drawer to give to Evan Armstrong, he of the strong arms, he the super hot guy that she is into, so that he can compete in an upcoming car race. And she takes one of her own gold chains and hides it under Jacqueline's pillow. She puts the key to the petty cash drawer in Jacqueline's jacket pocket.
Sorry, you mean her jackwet pocket? Her jackwet pocket?
Okay. I can't even pretend that's not funny, and I can't pretend to be annoyed. That's funny. Jackwet pocket is funny. Even though Jacqueline is spelled with a Q and jacket and pocket aren't.
That's why it's funny.
Okay.
That's literally why it's funny.
Regardless, the key makes it out. George discovers a $500 missing, and they attribute it to a burglar because it turns out that even though Lila is like, check Jacqueline's room, the necklace is actually in Lila's room. Nonetheless, Lila is still very, very skeptical of Joan and Jacqueline. Joan and George go on a Hawaiian work vacation. So George Fowler has to go to Hawaii for work. Joan goes, leaving Jacqueline and Lila together with Eva, the housekeeper, who seems great.
Who's tough but fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's fairer than she is tough, even. She's tough as nails, but she's fair as nails. And immediately Jacqueline reveals herself to be evil. She steals all of her clothes. She's on the phone all the time. She tries to steal all of her friends. It's kind of like a single white female thing. Joan comes back. You'll never believe the great news. I'm engaged to your father. Let's throw a combined engagement party / Jacqueline's birthday party, even though our wedding is also going to be in 3 weeks because there's just no time to wait. So let's throw several major parties within a 3-week span so that we can do this. Whatever. Lila is walking through the home and overhears Jacqueline and Joan speaking. And they are talking about how basically they are entrapping George Fowler. Joan is going to marry him and then divorce him and get alimony, and then they'll be rich because although they pretend to be rich, they're actually penniless. Which does raise the question, when George Fowler goes to LA to stay with them, where is he staying that he doesn't discover that they're penniless? But who knows? Lila tries to tell her dad, and her dad is like, you're just jealous. You're just competing for the love of DILFs. You are trying to sabotage our relationship. And Lila even knew that was going to happen. And Jacqueline even knew that was going to happen. And it does happen. And they're like, what do we do? So the day of the wedding, Lila finds out that they're using this amplification system whereby you need to have 3 microphones near each other. And if 3 microphones are near enough to each other and you are talking, you can be heard by all of the guests at the wedding. Just accept it. The 3 women, Jacqueline, Lila, and Joan, are getting ready. And Lila's is very kind of innocuous. Like, she basically is just like, Jacqueline, you're not who you pretend to be. Y'all are fake, and I hate this. And Joan immediately is like, what, Jacqueline? You told her we're fake? You told her we're only marrying her dad for money? Oh, no. Well, it doesn't matter because this is going to happen anyways, but that is our plan. We are only marrying the dad for money. And then Joan and Jacqueline go out to process down for the marriage. And if you've seen, and I know I talk about this a lot, if you've seen Princess Bride, it is the marriage scene from Buttercup's Nightmare for Joan and Jacqueline. All of the guests are like hissing at her and screaming rude words, and it is terrible.
Bow to her, bow to the queen of slime, the queen of filth, the queen of putrescence. Boo! Boo!
And then Daddy Fowler is like, wow, you guys are bad. You get out of here. Lila, you've won the love of your DILF. And, and over all of this time, Lila has also realized that Evan Armstrong is now flirting with Jacqueline. And he is saying to Jacqueline all of the stuff he used to say to Lila. And Lila realizes that Evan is only using her for money, and then we're using Jacqueline for money once Jacqueline has George Fowler's money. So she also just kind of like unceremoniously dumps Evan. And like, one thing that I love is she gives him exactly as much attention as he deserves. So she's just like, no, we're done here. You never meant anything to me. You still don't mean anything to me. Bye. And that's the book.
That was excellent. That was efficient. That was fantastic, Robert.
Thank you. Some notes, some performance reviews.
No, I just had a thought. There's a point in the book where Lila's kind of distracted and not even looking at the ingenue article she had open that was about love triangles. You know, of course, she's invested in the question of love triangles because, on the one hand, she's involved in a love triangle between this new guy, Evan, and his current girlfriend, Sonia, and she's trying to break them up. But there's multiple love triangles going on in this book, and there's multiple different roles that people are taking. And like we could think about how if we compare these triangles against each other, it sort of raises some questions about what's going on in the dynamics. So, which is to say, like I wrote it down at some point, the sort of parallel relations of the different triangles.
Okay.
So I
Read
wrote
that.
basically like, okay, the roles are old dutiful wife, new hussy, and man. So in one
And man.
yeah. So in first triangle, Sonia is old dutiful wife, Lila's new hussy, and man is Evan, right? In a second triangle, from Lila's perspective, she's old dutiful wife, Joan is new hussy, and George, her dad, is man. In the Electra complex sense, she's fighting for her dad's affection,
And
right?
Joan is the dude. Okay.
Right? Joan is trying to take him from her, right? She's the dutiful, but he's mine, right? Trying to protect her territory,
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
right? And then from a third perspective, Lila's the old dutiful wife, Jacqueline, or
Who?
Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Jacqueline is the new hussy,
Mm-hmm.
and Evan is the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Jacqueline, right? So Jacqueline steals Evan from Lila the way Lila stole Evan from Sonia, and the way Joan in Lila's mind is stealing George from her. But then when it happens,
Mm-hmm.
when it actually happens and she overhears Jacqueline and Evan, she says something that to me was sort of unexpected, which was like, wow, Evan was using me the way Joan was using Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And she analogizes herself actually to the role of her father.
Ooh.
And like
That's
I think
rich.
part of the question, I think what it raises is because the whole time Lila is so critical of Joan's manipulations to get George, but her own pursuit of Evan is equally as calculated. It's very strategic, it's very tactical. She is trying to get him in a way that is that. Sometimes they even use parallel language where it's like she says she's trying to edge Sonia out, and she's like, no, Joan and Jacqueline are trying to edge me out or whatever. And it's like she's doing the same thing that she's hating in Joan, right?
Yes.
She's doing, and she also doesn't like this manipulation that she's seeing, but she's also acknowledges that she's very much trying to control Evan by loaning him money. We all know it's manipulative to use people to get something from them. But this book shows us that it can also be manipulative and you can also exert power and control by giving. And I think the question that Lila is not necessarily asking herself, like she's very quick to say at the end, George was using me, right? But when she gives, I'm sorry, Freudian slip or Electrian slip, of course.
Electrian slip. I love that.
She's very quick at the end to say Evan was using me because she gives him this $500 for his car, his drag racing or whatever. But when she gives him the $500, she literally thinks to herself, like, there's nothing he can do. I've got him.
Yeah.
Right? But then she's thinking like, wow, like, look how manipulative Joan is of Daddy or whatever. So I think it's sort of like raising some of these questions also of like George, the famous human trafficker a few books ago. You know, we might ask who's manipulating whom and what's the different power relations in these stories.
That's interesting. Am I remembering correctly that there are moments where is Lila talking to Jess and complaining about Jacqueline, and Jess is like, that sounds like the way you act. You're just upset because she acts the way you act. Does that happen?
We can see. There's definitely moments where the connections are drawn a lot.
Yeah, where like the analysis is being done for us that like, oh yeah, Lila's having a hard time because that's how she is.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay, let's get into it.
I don't care if it is summer vacation, Lila Fowler complained, pushing her dark brown hair back from her face and sighing impatiently. She glanced up and down the Sweet Valley beach. I think we need some excitement around here, you guys. It's time for something new to happen. Jessica Wakefield gave her friend a knowing look. You mean time for someone new to happen, she corrected. Right. When Lila complains things around here in a rut, Amy Sutton joined in, it means the guys at the country club aren't exciting enough. Lila's brown eyes narrowed. I mean it. I don't know how you guys plan to spend your vacation, but I've been thinking it's time to do something totally different. We've covered, of course, already the summertime liminality you kind of talked about this idea of dutiful wife and wanting new excitement. And there's this moment of Lila saying, oh, I want some excitement. And them parsing that as like, there needs to be a new man. Like, what, are you bored with loving your dad? You need a new man who's not your dad? And
Yeah, and then she's like a few pages later, like, I have a feeling it's going to be a magical summer. And then what does she get? A freaking evil stepmother. When they do the exposition about Lila's character and talking about how she's rich and that's her personality is being rich and whatever, it says just something about this wording. I just noticed it felt a little bit different. She had made it clear to the entire junior class at Sweet Valley High that she was the stuff princesses are made of. Not that it feels different, but it feels specific, I guess. That way of saying it, the stuff princesses are made of. It made me think, why is it important to her, meaningful to her, not just to be a princess, but to be the stuff princesses are made of? It's saying that it's inherent. It's saying that it's the matter that makes her up. It's in her bones, right? Because she has status anxiety around being new money versus old money. And that comes up, not necessarily super directly, but it comes up at different points later in the book when it's like, you know, she normally would admire Joan for being old money because she seems like old money, but she seemed fake or whatever. And then Bruce being old money and she, you know, looking down on her for being new money. So I think saying the idea that like she's invested in, you know, not just being a princess, but making it clear that she's the stuff princesses are made of. It's in her, you know, it felt meaningful.
The thing I thought you were going to say, which is markedly less interesting, of course, because I'm going to say it, is that you had mentioned kind of the fairy tale element of it. And invoking princesses fairy tale, but also like the stuff that princesses are made of gives the idea of Cinderella or one of the Disney princesses who doesn't start as a princess, but had the princess in her all along. And it's like Lila may be new money. And so some of this may be new, but she's like always been a princess at heart. She's always had the stuff of princess, even if she didn't always have that tiara.
We could, a 6-word review could have been like, are princesses made or born?
Ooh. That's funny because actually in the running for one of my 6-word reviews was a feminist icon is born, which I'd already done once, so I didn't do it.
You've done like 85 times.
Well, I love the feminism in these books. I'm sorry if I have an open heart and can see strong women.
No, I love that. It's just the more people you call icons, it starts to lose a little bit its
luster,
power, you know? You know, and then I think we get more sort of princess vibes in Disney Princess. It's talking about her life. She had always loved Fowler Crest, the magnificent Spanish-style mansion she and her father shared in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Sweet Valley. When her mother moved out and divorced her father years before, Lila had been devastated, but she had grown used to living alone with her father. The truth was, she liked not having to share the limelight with anyone. Still, even life in paradise could stand a change from time to time. I have an hour to say about this paragraph.
I've set a timer for 12 seconds.
In this book, I kept getting such the strong feeling that it's like Fowler Crest is the battlefield on which these dynamics and which this fight is being enacted. Because it starts off with her talking about how she loves Fowler Crest. And it's like, yeah, we know they live on this gorgeous, glamorous mansion property on the hill and so on. And we always have known this. But the emphasis in this book is so much more. And like, it's constantly her frustration with them is around the space they're taking up at Fowler Crest and the ways in which Fowler Crest is being like imbued with their identity or their presence. And every time the evil stepmother adds a carpet or a piece of decor, it's like, oh God, they're like gaining territory on her. You know, and then he hosts a party for the girl and it's like on Fowler Crest and that's insult to injury, whatever. There's a moment where it's like she's very frustrated about them, but she's looking at Fowler Crest and thinks to herself, well, at least this will never change.
Yeah.
Her dad's never there, right? Her mom's not there. Fowler Crest is her only stability, right? It's like, it makes sense to me that she associates a lot of, like, that's her stability, that's her peace, that's her thing she knows. That's literally what's there for her when she gets home, and Eva, you know? So, like, I gave an appreciation in this book for some of her pain and just some of her, like, loneliness. Like, I always knew that she had it, but I think the way it sort of gets shown as happening, like, in this intrusion in her home is effective.
No.
Mother exclamation point. Yeah, which double triple meaning. Okay. Because then when they talk about her mother, right? The fact that the exposition on the mother is when her mother had moved out and divorced her father years before Lila had been devastated, it's like, how come there's no explanation of like who this woman is, Where does she live? Have they ever had a relationship? Why not? Her being divorced isn't enough of that. And then I thought, well, maybe it's clever because maybe it is a remark on the sort of like default and unremarked on nature of mothers' absences, like in Disney movies and stuff, and like fairy tale things of like. But then when it says she had grown used to living with her father, she liked not having to share the limelight with anyone. It's so interesting because what that does by coming right after the sentence about her mother leaving is it naturalizes this competition. Like
Yes.
it basically is implying that it's just like a logical conclusion that like you'd have relief when your mother was gone because you don't have a sexual competitor for your father. It's like that is fucking insane. That either means that Lila is so pathological or that she's in such major denial. And my interpretation is it's denial. She uses that to repress the pain of where the hell is my mom?
Yeah. I mean, in that so first off, I underlined that sentence that you read and wrote mom position is competition exclamation point. And then in that very same paragraph, Lila says, it's just that there's no challenge around here. And it's like challenge, competition, challengers, Zendaya, like it's all here in the text and it's all happening. The other thing that I really liked about your kind of your discussion of the encroachment of Joan and Jacqueline as almost like a home invasion, as like the specter of burglary looms large here. That is the initial kind of charge that or crime that Lila tries to charge Jacqueline with unsuccessfully. And in some ways she is just making material the burglary that she feels internally as her safe space is being violated.
And you know what may add to that for the reader is the fact that since this is the first superstar, we don't yet know the genre. And so it could be like a thriller. Like we don't know if these people are going to have a knife. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it could have very much been that there was a threat that went that far versus like then at the end George being like, just get your stuff and leave, and then being like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Like,
there is a moment where I wrote in the margin like single white female, just as kind of like an off the cuff, like, oh, Jacqueline is trying to take over Lila's life. But I like kind of, I guess, took for granted the potential of violence there. And
right.
I think there is potentially some unspoken violence that could, or unspoken violence or threat, because when Lila and Jacqueline are left alone, it is just presented as a fait accompli. Jacqueline is wearing some of her clothing, and then Lila later in the same chapter is like looking for something cool to wear, and she has nothing to wear because Jacqueline has just taken all of it. And that happens mostly off stage, but it's like, what did Jacqueline, I mean, Lila, we know, is a strong and powerful woman who would stand up. So what threat, what violence, what coercion did Jacqueline employ to kind of secret away all of that clothing?
The problem was Lila had, remember a million episodes ago, we talked about the Talmudic concept of Migo?
Of course.
Migo is when, to remind our listeners who don't have such good memories, Migo is when you have the opportunity to lie and you could benefit from it, but you're honest. You almost get extra points for if there's a question of if you should be believed next time. It's like goes in your favor of like, well, this person has a history of doing the right thing, sort of. Lila has reverse Migo. She has like bad honesty debt because I think what you didn't mention in your otherwise highly comprehensive plot summary was that part of the reason George, Lila's dad, is so quick to not believe her at the end when she tells him what she overheard about the evil grifters is because there was a couple of incidents already where she was dishonest. One was she pretended not to spend $600 at Lizette's, and the other was when she, implicitly accused Jacqueline of taking the necklace and then it wasn't there, and he's just like, okay. Yeah, again, just on having more empathy for Lila, like seeing how she feels about both her relationship to her father and her relationship to Evan and some of the dynamics and how she thinks about it really made my heart break for her. And like her saying that there was no challenge, right? I wrote like that means no boy to reenact this dynamic with and hope for a different outcome. Like no challenge means like no opportunity to,
to engage in this psychosexual torture.
Yeah, and like we'll see some, I think, really interesting examples of like when stuff happens and how she perceives it. And I just really fell for her, but yeah.
And I have no need to gain empathy for Lila, because I love Lila. I've always been a Lila apologist, or at least in my mind, I've always been a Lila apologist. And this book just made me love her.
Okay.
One thing I can't believe you haven't talked about yet is that Lila's not on her famous Oriental rug. We don't use that word that way, but in the book they normally do. She's on a regular towel. And I reread this passage several times. Right at the beach, regular towel.
I know. One thing I think was a little bit of a Pascal's herring, i.e., like a misdirect or like trying to make us think something's happening that doesn't, is when it starts off a few pages in, Lila being like, huh, it's kind of strange, but like Daddy's actually been weird about credit cards lately. And it's like, huh, but like, I'm sure it's just nothing. And it's like, oh, makes you think there's going to be like money problems, which
All right.
would have been an amazing Lila story, which
I
would have been
agree.
like a huge story that would have made sense to be like a special edition. It's like, oh my God, they get poor,
That would
even
be
temporarily. They
Schitt's
wouldn't do it
Creek.
permanently, but they would do a book that's like they get poor and then being like, oh, someone made a keyboard entering mistake. Don't worry, they're still rich or something.
Schitt's Creek. It would be
After
a
they
great
learn their
little Schitt's
lesson.
Creek.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about this book being a special edition, parts of it I got over as we got into it, but at the beginning especially, it is, in my mind, worsely written than your average book. In describing the twins, they say this sentence, which kind of reminds me of he's 21 years old, will you let him in, or whatever. They were 16 years old, having been born only 4 minutes apart. What? That's not how anyone speaks, or writes, or talks, or thinks.
That's funny.
Thank you.
I mean, first time I wrote grifter in caps lock is when we have our first encounter with George, which I did wonder, is this the first time we've seen him since book 2? Because remember, even though he was like very conspicuously like having a spectral presence in
That book that you referenced from 200 years ago, Miss Julie. It's not Miss Julie. What's it called?
whatever that one, Showdown, he never actually showed up, right? Anyway,
Show down, he didn't show up. Good one. Because show and then down and up are opposite directions.
it's like actually so hurtful that he is taking all this time to spend with Joan, and he's a demon in this book. Like he like literally out of basically nowhere, like just starts bringing them this woman and her daughter there constantly. He goes from like 0 to 100, then he's like, we're getting engaged, like you better get used to it. And like they're moving in, she's gonna wear all your clothes. It's like insult to injury because he keeps taking all this time off from work, and it's like he's literally never done that once for Lila. He's never asked her one question.
Sure.
But then she's like, oh, is that a new scarf, Daddy? And he's like, oh yes, it's from Joan, it's from Milan, and she's such good at shopping. And I wrote grifter because there's so many grifter clues from the beginning of this book, but like if this woman would have been a normal woman, there would have been no need for him to talk about her shopping. Like to sign up to flag conspicuous shopping habits so early on, and then it gets like confirmed.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
I wrote Eva is Dorota from Gossip Girl. Remember? You didn't watch Gossip Girl?
Not for me.
Just the like tough housekeeper woman who like, but they're close.
I like that. I like tough but close.
A vodka on the rocks. Big glass, not too many rocks. 3 olives.
The next scene we get of George Fowler, it's interesting because you were talking about like power and control and stuff, and we see him, he's planning the menu for lunch with Joan and Jacqueline. And there's this interesting kind of gender play here where Lila didn't like her seeing her father reduced to this. A rich, powerful computer executive planning a menu. She cleared her throat menacingly. It's almost like she sees him as being feminized by Joan and being taken advantage of by Joan. And so she is almost, I don't use these kind of categories inherently, but like she is masculinizing herself. She is being aggressive, menacing, threatening as her dad is receding. And she sees herself as protecting her dad. So she's like the new alpha male. So it is Electra, but it's also almost Oedipal.
Except I hear this and I
Okay.
see it.
Okay.
And I think that that's almost the excuse. Like, it's not that she really believes that or really cares about that. It's she's telling herself that's what bothers her about it. But what really bothers her about it is, oh my gosh, he's actually being in the domestic sphere. He's actually involving himself in home life. He's actually giving a shit what we eat for dinner. He would never, because then he says to her, make Eva make you something good for dinner. And he does, it's like 2 pages later, right? So I think that's the real thing that's hurtful, but she puts this gender thing on it.
Interesting. We do have kind of an important question.
Oh God.
What?
Speak.
I was just gonna say, is cold poached salmon with cucumber sauce and a light lobster sauce too much seafood?
You skipped the most important line. Or maybe a cold soup. That could have been a 5-word review. Because this is now, I believe, the 3rd time we've had rich people serving cold soup in the summer. The first was Courtney in Beverly Hills. The second
We've had, I
was
remember
either
it.
with the first or the
No,
second.
I was just gonna say, I remember you talking about this at least twice. So
Oh,
I'm just
do you remember what
supporting
the
you.
second was?
No, I'm just supporting you because I know that you're maybe not gonna come up with it, but it's still definitely
No,
true.
because I think it was either the Patmans, but or okay, Robert,
Oh, wait,
or
wasn't it Olivia
no, the
didn't know what to?
Hanlons. Oh, I think it was the Hanlons. You think it was
I thought maybe Olivia, when she was courting the new Patman, maybe had some experience with a chilled soup that she didn't know her way around.
okay, so I think it's either at the Patmans or I think it could also be, remember when Ken was dating Hanlon, Suzanne
course.
Hanlon? Horny broken, horny struck, horny
Horny struck.
breaker. Okay,
Pink broken.
and he went to their house and they were always talking about being rich. And I feel like they might have had cold soup.
That makes sense.
Whatever. The point
Okay.
is, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Very quickly we meet Jacqueline, and I just thought it was funny because Lila immediately reads her for filth, and it's like she's wearing a skirt and a top that were bland. She would never be caught dead in that terrible greenish beige color. And I just wrote in margins, drag Liz.
Okay, at the Carla with the K Xavier concert, I can't with the name.
You shouldn't have to.
It is, I think, again, contributing to the potential fantasy element that like Lila is actively at this concert, like moping about her dad and Joan when she has the meet cute with Evan Strongarms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good.
Oh God. I'd love to hear you read the first 2 sentences of chapter 4.
This is the life, Jessica breathed. That's what you wanted?
2 sentences.
She and Lila were lying side by side on chaise longue. That's why. I was like, why did she want to hear me say, this is the life? She wanted to hear me say chaise longue, listeners. She wants that chaise to be all the way long. One thing
It's like, you know what it's like? It reminds me of Unfamously, a show that you hate, but Jennifer
God.
Coolidge saying, sorry, that, what did she say? That
something
shade-
homophobic?
The Shayiz. She's like, sorry, that Shayiz is taken.
Sorry, that Shayiz is taken.
Nope, that's nothing.
You're rude. Okay, so in order to get Evan Strongarms away from his current girlfriend, Sonia, Lila acts on a hot tip from Jess. The hot tip was that Sonia once was into Bruce. So she basically says to Bruce, do me a favor, get this girl Sonia to get with you and basically leave Evan, or at least like for an evening or whatever. And I'm going to get my little hands on Evan. And Bruce is like, okay. But then you're going to have an IOU on me. And she's like, fine. And then later, and he like does it successfully, basically. Like he gets Sonia to go with him. She gets Evan. It's like all feels a little too easy.
Yes, it does.
Which Jessica very much remarks on. And then later he's like, okay, I'm coming to collect or whatever. Like, you need to get Evan to drop out of this like drag race.
Not the fun one, listeners. The car one.
Not the fun one, the car one.
Sorry.
That could have been 6-word review. Because I am putting money on this other guy, Toby. So like Evan is a competition. So make it that he doesn't go. And she's like, well, what am I going to do? I guess I have to do that. But then she is a freaking genius and is so smart and kills 2 birds with 1 stone by she like at some point in her scheme of trying to figure out how she's going to reveal the grifters to her dad while they're planning the wedding, she's like, okay, well, for now I'm gonna have to go along with this. So she's like, let me help with the wedding and like take on some things and let me plan like and it's either the engagement party or the actual wedding, but it's like this Friday. So Evan, I'm crying and you must come with me to my dinner to cheer me up for my mean family. And he's like, but it's my drag race. And she's like, fine. He's like, okay, fine, I'll come. So that ends up working out for Bruce. And then it's like actually so fun because then later at the end of the book, when she's telling Evan off for him being actually shitty, She's like, well, guess what? You didn't go to the drag race because of me, and now I'm even hanging out with this guy Toby, and like he's hot, and like he won instead of you because of me, and like I'm actually the sneaky one.
Mhm. I will say it's kind of a Pascal's herring, the whole Bruce bet
Yep.
plot. They keep
Yep.
being like, it's like you made a deal with the devil. He won't even tell you what he wants. You're going to be indebted to him forever. And nothing comes of it at all. Also, I was just like, why wouldn't you just not do what he asked? What is the actual consequence?
He'll tell him. That's a consequence.
That's fine.
Not for her. She's obsessed with this guy. She's freaking losing her mind over this guy like she never has about anyone. They're all like,
Well,
wow.
yeah, but I mean, okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah, fine, whatever. We get another great moment from Lila in the middle of chapter 4, and then we've got to keep moving.
Uh-huh.
Joan is recounting to Lila as she introduces Jacqueline. She goes, Lila, your father just said the most flattering thing to me at the bar. He said I don't look old enough to have a daughter Jackie's age. Isn't that silly of him? It certainly is, Lila said. That's really funny.
Joan asks Jessica if she's of the Boston Wakefield or the Philadelphia Wakefield.
That's funny.
I did like the thing of they're figuring out lunch and he's like, let's eat outside or whatever. And she's like, no, we don't want to be in the sun. And he's like, okay, we can go inside. And she's like, that's a better idea. Lila couldn't believe her ears. Her father was one of the most powerful businessmen in the state, and he was just letting this woman tell him what to do. It reminded me of Sex and the City, Charlotte and Bunny and Trey, the three of them out for lunch at the country club. And she's trying to like get Trey to be more like under her control. And she sees that he's like does whatever his mom wants, like it's just like this. And she sees that it's like basically he's like, I'll have the chicken. And then his mom like puts her hand on his head and she goes like, dear, like, don't you think salmon's a better idea or something? He's like, okay, I'll have the salmon. And so Charlotte's like watching it later. She tries it and it works. And she's like so happy.
What are you two lovebirds doing tonight?
We've got dinner reservations at Cloche.
I was there last week. Disappointing crab, and the host was rude. Maybe you should go to Cote Basque instead.
All righty.
Charlotte was impressed with Bunny's technique. Trey had been looking forward to Cloche all week.
It reminded me of that. Okay. Cold seafood salad. They love cold seafood salad in these books.
These books look close to the salad.
Lila wears a cool outfit, beach disco. Bruce takes Sonia from Evan. I wrote huge letters, yikes, on page 69 when Lila is hanging out with Evan after he's pissed off because Sonia went and danced with Bruce, and she describes him as melancholy and angry like a romantic hero.
Boo.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Okay, the strong arms comment. Please read it. 71.
Evan, he said, putting out his hand to shake. Evan Armstrong. That's cute. I bet people laugh all the time when you say that. Since you have such strong arms. I'm Lila Fowler. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay, chapter 7. Like, I don't think we need the car stuff.
No, there's all this. It's the same tension over and
except
over
one
again.
really funny line where Lila's at the drag race place, whatever it's called, track, and she notices there aren't that many women. It says she was feeling like a real pioneer. And basically, her and Evan start hanging out, and they like really like each other. And he tells her he's going to dump Sonia.
And they're having like real conversations, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like she needs this. He empathizes with her. He talks about how hard it must be to have the home invasion happening and that kind of thing. And it just is really, really. I wrote the margin sweet.
Yeah, and you're thinking like, oh, this could be good as long as he like follows up on dumping the girlfriend and doesn't like drag this out or whatever. Chapter 7, there was something on page 90 where it says Lila congratulated herself on playing it exactly right with him. She had made sure Evan knew how ready she was to step in and take Sonia's place whenever he felt like it was the right time. But Lila hadn't wanted to seem pushy or clingy either. She had to congratulate herself for playing it exactly right. This is heartbreaking. This is heartbreaking. It's like she thinks that if she sacrifices her needs long enough and like is somehow perfect, she'll get him.
He could never love the real me. I've got to play this.
And she says she doesn't want to be pushy, which is how she describes Joan, you know? It's so sad.
Chapter 8, we've got Jacqueline's second borrowing of clothing, first asked borrowing of clothing.
La Scala. They go to La Scala restaurant, which we'd be remiss to not mention the famous viral La Scala salad, which had a real moment about a year or two ago. I made it. It's very good. Has salami in it.
I know the salad you're speaking of. That's from these books.
Jacqueline has the nerve to take Lila's black and gold mayo bathing suit, which was $100 at Lisette's.
And then she gets mustard on it, of all things. Mustard.
Bitch.
I like the way that the book understands their dynamic. Jacqueline is so good-natured and full of enthusiasm that Lila, by comparison, grew more and more grumpy. It does make sense.
It is confusing for a while about Evan of like, is he a grifter? Like when he sort of asks her but doesn't, but does for the money. And it's like, but then it makes it seem at the end that even though he's a liar and he's manipulative, it doesn't seem like this was premeditated from the beginning or something. Like you sort of think like, oh, is it going to be that he's in on it with them from the beginning and he's also grifting her and he like,
I know.
But you're like, well, he didn't orchestrate that meet cute, did he? But it's like, no, it seems like he actually did really like Lila based on what he says to Jacqueline, like, oh, I've been confused and I feel bad or something. Like I did, or like he says some.
Yeah, but I think he was playing Lila too, because he said, we'll get there.
Okay.
We get a little insight into, I feel kind of bad for Jacqueline as well when George Fowler's trying to plan her birthday party and she goes, I can't believe he wants to make such a big deal out of my birthday. No one ever has before. And I was like, oh, I guess your relationship with your mom isn't good. And it's just a little weird that like no one questions, why would Jacqueline want to have a birthday party in Sweet Valley? She doesn't know anybody except Lila's friends.
Why does she want to literally like live there all the time? It's crazy.
It makes no sense. It's cuckoo banana pants. When Jacqueline basically cops to Lila and says like, oh no, I am a bad person, and does it, which makes no sense because she would just keep up the facade until they were married. It makes no sense. But she says, I have to give you credit, Jacqueline said calmly, picking up the gold chain on Lila's dresser and slipping it around her neck. You didn't believe I really was the way I pretended to be. Most people buy it. I guess that's because you and I are two of a kind, Lila. And so she's just drawing that comparison and taking things from her.
It is really hilarious. Like we've seen this a couple times, but Jacqueline and Joan, I think, are the most of all the villains who love to like do exposition for hours and hours with like almost no provocation or reason to like literally say everything. Another review could have been like Lila put two and two together. Because like from the jump, she's like, something about her seems fake. And like, she doesn't seem particularly solvent for someone so rich. And like, for someone who's rich, she doesn't seem to ever pay anything. But then when she's like, God, I hate these people. I don't trust them. They're fake. Like it never occurs to her to be like, are they grifters? Like maybe they are actually lying. And it's like, it would have made so much more sense for her to be like actively investigating that.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a better book if it would have been like she goes looking and then finds something or whatever, versus like then she just overhears them being like, yeah, we're grifters.
Yeah.
It's like she could have just put two and two together because she was suspecting it from the beginning anyway. Because then she goes, oh, I was right all along. It's like, but so why didn't you try to make that be the thing you could show your dad? That's obviously like
more interesting.
Why are you being dumb?
I agree. There is this moment that I absolutely love when Lila and Bruce are talking about the IOU and how she owes him. And he says, come meet up with me. I can't tell you over the phone. You have to meet me in person. And she gets there. She has to take the bus because Jacqueline has taken her car. And Bruce is like all bent out of shape. And he goes, I'm really seeing your gratitude lie. It's written all over your face. Lila tossed back her hair. You made a deal with me, Bruce. I don't have to give you gratitude on top of everything else. So quit bugging me. I like love that moment where she's like, wait, we traded favors. I don't owe you anything more than that. I'm not doing emotional labor and pretending to be grateful to you. Go fuck yourself. I
too found that very satisfying.
Bruce has this incredibly stupid line. Why would Sonia want to bother messing around with a grease monkey like Evan Armstrong when she has a chance at the real thing? Talking about himself as if it's like kind of saying like Evan is a grease monkey and I'm a real monkey.
Funny. I wrote die in huge letters underlined with George Fowler at the engagement party does a toast and calls Jacqueline as dear as a daughter to him.
Gross. Jacqueline also maybe writes for these books because she says when she finds out about the engagement, yes, I'm so happy for the two of you. To be so much in love is so incredibly rare. So lucky.
It's like what Elizabeth said. I'm sure Mr. Wilkins worked very hard to achieve that very distinguished promotion.
He must have worked very hard to be so much in love. It's like giving too much in love.
A small detail on page 179. Yeah, just on Lila's how she experiences her time with Evan. Lila closed her eyes. Evan's touch was like magic. She could feel herself calming down already as he ran his finger along the nape of her neck, sending shivers up and down her spine. And I think, because of other examples, this one I think is a little bit ambiguous, but the way I read this is like she's telling herself it's calming, but what she's really feeling is shivers. Something could be sexually stimulating or sort of a little bit erotic, a little bit exciting, and also be calming. I understand that those can coexist, but just the fact that that's what they chose as these descriptors along with everything else, it makes me feel like, no, it's like she feels anxious to please him and that she's never good enough and that it's this constant challenge. And that is sending her shivers. That's not like shivers isn't, if it was Liz and Todd, it would be like she felt warm, she felt relaxed, she felt like she could just, it doesn't say that. Just the fact that it says shivers on her spine, it's like, it's because she's anxious, but she's reanalyzing that as calm. Like she's reanalyzing this as intimacy when it's not. And that's bad.
That is hard. It's also giving Jeffrey in the eyebrows. Jeffrey kind of tracing the outline of.
Except that actually is calming.
Well, of course, yeah, because Jeffrey has got a cool hand and a magic touch.
And by the way,
yeah,
nails as good a time as any. I'll just say really quick. I do think like Elizabeth chose Todd over Jeffrey because like Jeffrey is too stable. And Todd gave her more occasions to stress. There's more drama with Todd.
He's gay.
And like
drama queen.
He is gonna give her that drama that she actually secretly wants. Okay.
Okay, we get basically everything we've already talked about. We get the reveal that Evan and Jacqueline are going for things. We do get this sad moment with Lila. Now Lila really couldn't believe it. Evan had been using her just as Jonah and Jacqueline had been using her father. What a jerk I am, she thought furiously, her eyes filling with tears. Her whole world was caving in around her. First, her father had abandoned her, and now she'd lost Evan. Lila had never in her life felt so close to despair.
What's also so hurtful about this is that, like, what she overhears, it's not just that she sees Evan and Jacqueline been sneaking around, but that Evan says to Jacqueline, like, wow, like, you're so great. Like, Lila was never supportive of my racing. Like, she just never took an interest in it. And Lila's like, that's when her heart sinks and it's like, oh shit, that's what he had told her about Sonia, right? And it's like this whole time with him, she's been trying to just be good. Like this whole time, like when she was talking to Jess, she's like, I'm just trying to make him happy. And like, she says, like, I organized this whole picnic for him and she's going to the drag race and she's putting so much effort to show her care for him. And like, she thinks that that's going to be good enough. And it's like, what a slap in the face that he can just, like, she's been so supportive. And the fact that he can so carelessly just erase that and say, like, just negate that, it's like such a slap in the face.
It's hurtful. The other thing that I thought you were going to maybe comment on is when she's listing her abandonments, and I guess because of the timeline, it doesn't make sense that she would, but just as first her father had abandoned her, I was like, well, actually, first, didn't your mom abandon you? Like,
but
I know
like she like refuses to acknowledge it.
Yeah,
I think that's her denial.
There's such a deep wound there that she's like, oh, I feel so lost and alone because I don't have my dad and now I don't have Evan. It's like, well, what was your original loss?
Yeah, it's like completely erased. It's completely erased. It's very interesting.
Who knows? And then we get the resolution we talked about. It's the wedding day, the microphone of it all. We get, of course, Pascal's microphone. We get introduced to the microphone before we actually hear that the microphone is being used.
No, when it starts going, like, when they make a point, like 5 chapters before, to be like, for George to be like, Lila, I'm assigning you the task of like understanding how the sound system works. And then she goes, and I'm like, now you're really being dumb, Lila. Because then she goes, okay, well, while I'm figuring out how to expose them, I might as well learn something about the sound system. And then the next thing is like, Lila hoped her plan would work. I'm like, but they never showed us when she actually put 2 and 2 together because it took her way too fucking long.
The only reason why any of this works is just because Joan is unbelievably, like, and I don't mean unbelievable like the way we use it. It's like, you cannot believe that someone who has been so successfully deceitful would do this. So Lila goes, You know, this might be a good time to think about what you're doing before it happens. Do you know what it means to stand up in front of 300 people and pretend to feel something you don't? What are you saying? Joan demanded. I don't understand you, Lila. You know I adore your father, and I want the chance to be a good mother to you. I think it's time we all quit the acting here. Jacqueline made it clear to me weeks ago who you two are and what you're really after. Joan turned dead white as she stared at her daughter. You did what? She gasped. Don't listen to her. She's lying, Jacqueline said desperately. But Joan's expression of horror said it all. How could you? She demanded, grabbing her daughter and shaking her shoulders violently. You could have ruined everything. If her father finds out, don't you see how close we are? You swore not to drop the act for a single minute. It's like no one, this is like the end of Murder, She Wrote. No one does this.
It's so crazy especially because she's literally being like, how could you? How could you say something? We said we weren't going to say anything. We weren't going to say that we're trying to steal the money so that we can be rich from her father. And she's like screaming at the top of her lungs. It's also very strange that like, why didn't Jacqueline tell her mom
Yes.
when she knew that they were onto them? Like, whatever.
But it is, I mean, the fantasy fairy tale of it, like Lila even says, it's Ursula reveal. Lila even says, it was almost too easy. She would have been afraid it'd be hard to get Joan and Jacqueline to show to show their true colors in the excitement for the ceremony, but she should have known better.
And then like it's fun how everything wraps up and she doesn't have to have really any accountability. Like I was worried there was like I like that at the end, like she doesn't have to take accountability for the fact that she stole the $500 from petty cash because she just tells her dad like, hey, Evan owes you this money.
Here's an IOU he wrote out. It's for you, I guess. He'll give you the $500 and I guess we're done here. Jacqueline gave it to him. That was probably not great. Oops.
And then George is like, well, guys, haha, like, let's just make this a party for Lila, who's my daughter, who showed me what it is to know when people are trying to be grifters to you.
I love when the reveal happens, Mr. Fowler goes, Lila, you knew all along, didn't you? And every time I accused you of being unfriendly or unjust to them, it was because you were trying to tell me the truth and I would never listen. And then the narrator goes, this was a somewhat generous description of what had transpired, but Lila was in no mood to put herself down.
Loved it.
Then Dad goes on, oh, Lila, I feel awful. You've been so brave and honest with me, and I've been so horrible to you. He cries, throwing his arms around her. And I do see your kind of fairy tale wish fulfillment here. Like, this is the closing that she wanted.
A few pages after that, she sees Evan. He's sulking. And he's like, I guess just because I made a stupid mistake and thought I started to like Jacqueline, you're never going to talk to me again. It says, Lila bit her lip, trying to think of the best way to let Evan know exactly how minimal a figure he had become in her life over the past day or two. That's so powerful because she was obsessed with him, right? And it's like she reconciles with her dad and his importance disappears instantly. Like he gets brought down to zero like instantly.
Now that that's settled, I have a few friends to go talk to, Lila said, emphasizing the word friends. She didn't even give Evan a backward glance as she swept off through the crowd to look for Jessica and that bitch Amy.
And then, I mean, the last paragraph is such fairy tale. It's like, she knew the whole scene had been a triumph. Her car.
Good one.
Blah, blah, blah. Lila felt like a true heroine. Like, it couldn't have been more perfect, and what a beautiful reunion in the end.
Well, she knew her father would always be grateful to her for exposing Joan and Jacqueline and saving him from making a terrible mistake.
So he owed her, and now she controlled him.
And the wedding, which could have been a disaster, turned out to be the perfect reunion between father and daughter.
We do have an ad in here.
Do we?
At the end. So the next book is what? Boy Troubles?
Boy Troubles. The Trouble with Boys.
It's hot. It's sexy. It's fun. Dirty dancing. Baby's life changes forever when she meets Johnny, for he is an electrifying dancer, and he shows Baby what dancing is really all about. The heat, the rhythm, and the excitement. A sensational series based on the characters from the top grossing Dirty Dancing movie and television series. Number 1, Baby It's You. Number 2, Hello Stranger. Number 3, Save the Last Dance. For me. Number 4, Breaking Up is Hard to Do. Number 5, Stand By Me. Number 6, Our Day Will Come. And then there's another series called First Kiss that sounds boring that I won't read.
I don't have those ads. The only ads I have
you
are
never
for
do.
Sweet
You
Valley.
never have that stuff.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I normally have it
you
in
have the-
Kindle. I have the book.
Oh.
All I have is
Should've
Sweet
got the
Valley High
circle.
books.
Should have got the circle.
Should have gotten the
Circle.
circle.
Well, if you
Should have gotten the circle. Or,
if you want to fuck your dad,
oh no,
okay.
Let's try-
If you
let's-
want to
let's
murder
do it.
your mother,
better.
if you don't have enough of your daddy's attention, and you live
Pardo's
alone
your
in a-
daddy now.
and you live alone in a big, big mansion,
hmm
your friends are probably podcast is sort of your friends, and you are really reliant on parasocial relationships. So in that case, you should put an effort to kind of engage a little bit. You should open your app, rate, review, subscribe, send to a friend if you like this.
If you are down on your luck and you are hoping to romance a rich, successful computer tycoon, I would say you should probably be listening to this podcast to learn what you shouldn't do. And in exchange for invaluable advice on how to lure and trap a rich, successful computer tycoon, the least you could do is you could share this with a friend. You should send this and be like, hey, why don't you bag a millionaire as well? We could be millionaire sister brides, or whatever the term is. Is that the term? I'm sure there's a TLC documentary show called Millionaire Sister Brides.
Sister Brides. That's funny. Millionaire sister brides. It's just-
Regardless.
It's hard to believe George Fowler would do this and not have a prenup. Like we've not exactly seen him be like a romantic. Like I'm sorry, but like he literally has no relationships except for with money. Like I just don't see it. But that's why it's a special edition. Sort
It
of.
exists in the liminal space.
God knows what the next ones are going to be. Who's next after this one?
Brooch.
You know? Bruce?
Brooch, yeah.
Oh, it's probably like he is not getting enough time with his dad too. I bet they're all about their dads. That'd be funny, actually.
That would actually be pretty great.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.